My name is Leonard Koziansky. I'm an artist. This is my studio. Welcome to my studio. This is where I work every day. This is where I paint my pictures. And I'd like to talk about artists who paint the same painting twice. And why would they do that? What's the motive behind painting the same painting twice? Well, there are many motives. One of them is experimentation, doing it a different way, using a different technique. Another is demand for a painting. And another is to make money. And then in some cases, we really don't know why they painted a second version because there are no records to tell us. So in my case, I started off with this painting done in 2020 called The Midnight Hour. And it's a scene, sort of a backyard scene in Florida at night. And when the pool lights are on, they sort of glow, that beautiful blue glow. And I have oranges in the trees. But this was my first version. And then several years later, I did a second version because I had been experimenting with different techniques, different ways to paint things. And so in this version, I wanted to do the water a little bit differently. And so I want it to be identical to the first version, except for the water. Well, here is painting another version of the same painting has kind of a long history. And here, a very famous example called The Madonna of the Rocks by Leonardo da Vinci, painted in 1483. This painting is about 6 feet high, and it's in the Louvre Museum. And in this painting, the Virgin Mary is sitting, looking at John the Baptist, and he is worshiping Jesus. It looks like he's praying to Jesus, who's looking back at him. And behind Jesus is the angel Uriel, who in this apocryphal story from the life of Jesus takes place while they're on their flight into Egypt to escape King Herod. Now, because artists in Italy at the time had no idea what things looked like in Africa, here we have Leonardo sort of inventing his own version of an African landscape. And here, and this painting was painted as a commission for the Chapel of the Immaculate Conception in Milan. And so here, the second version is in the National Gallery of Art in London. Now, it's a little bit different in color, in texture, in the way it's rendered. The background is very blue in color. And if we look at the two versions side by side, we can see that the version on the left, the Louvre version, the earlier version, is much warmer and I think more natural looking in its flesh tones. And the one on the right is the one in the National Gallery of Art. The rocks are much crisper. They're much more well-defined. The background is very blue. In the Louvre version over there on the left, the background's very misty. Now, when Leonardo was painting that first version over there on the left, a collector came by, saw the painting, and wanted it. And Leonardo sold it to him. But then Leonardo was contractually obligated to do this painting for the chapel in Milan. And the contract specified the subject matter, the pigments that were to be used. And so Leonardo had to finish this commission. And so this was the second version that he did to fulfill the commission. Now, here is another painting of the Holy Family by Nicolas Poussin, done in 1648. This composition is based on a pyramid, and we can see the Holy Family sitting on the steps of this temple complex. And again, this is a depiction of the flight into Egypt trying to escape King Herod. And in this painting, we have Mary holding Jesus and Saint Elizabeth with John the Baptist. And John the Baptist is holding an apple to baby Jesus, symbolic of the fact that Jesus is going to redeem the human race from the sin of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Now, over there on the right is Joseph, and he's a carpenter, and so he's using a compass. But notice how dark and shadowy he is. He's just sort of like this dark silhouette, very much a secondary figure here. This version is in the Cleveland Museum of Art, and is definitely by Nicholas Poussin. Now, this version is in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, though there is some disagreement as to, how much is by Poussin and how much was by assistants. But here the colors are warmer and the flesh tones are a little bit smoother, but it uses that same sort of pyramid-like composition. And here are the two side by side. Now, which one is better? Which one? The one on the left is considered to be the superior version, but, it's for us to decide. It's for us to look at both of them and decide which one we like best. Let's look at another painting. This one by Gilbert Stuart, a portrait of George Washington. And when artists would paint a portrait, they would have their subject, their sitter, sit because there were no photographs, so they had to paint from life. And so here we have Gilbert Stuart doing a painting of George Washington from life while Washington is sitting for this portrait. Now, because the artist didn't want to have the sitter sitting there for long hours while they painted the background and other things, what they would do is they would first paint the face, the head, the shoulders, maybe the hands, and then they would finish the rest of the picture later in their studio. Now, in this case, Gilbert Stuart got this far with the painting, and he was supposed to finish it and then present it to George Washington. But he kept this for himself. This is called the Athenaeum portrait. This is the one done directly from George Washington, and it is the image that is used, or is the basis for the image used on the $1 bill. But Gilbert Stuart kept this version and then painted another version to present to George Washington. Subsequently, he painted 130 versions of this, which he would sell for $100 a piece whenever he needed money. And $100 was a lot of money back in 1800 in early America. And so here, this is an example of sort of what the finished painting was supposed to be like. This is the Williamstown portrait. As I said, Gilbert Stuart painted 130 versions. 60 of them have survived. And this one is in the Clark Institute of Art in Williamstown, Massachusetts. This was painted in 1803. Now, the original, we can see side by side with this Williamstown portrait. The original was painted in 1796 while Washington was still president of the United States. And the one on the right is very similar to paintings in the National Gallery of Art or the Walters Gallery and in many other institutions around the country. So when I did my painting of the witching hour, I liked it a lot. But as time went on, I began to experiment with and develop other techniques for painting the water. And so I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to go back and do that painting over again, but use this different technique for the water, but have everything be identical, have everything be the same? Well, that was pretty much impossible. Because when you're doing a painting years later, it's at a different point in time. You're a different person. You can't possibly do things exactly the way you did them 4 or 5 years ago. And so this is the second version. And in this version, I used a different technique for the water. But as you can see, overall the colors are generally different. Even the position of things is a little different. And here are the two side by side. Which one is better? Well, that depends. Which one do you like better? But let's talk a little bit about that technique that motivated me to make this second version. Well, when I'm painting, I will often underpaint a textured area with pure white paint, creating the texture with the white paint, which I will then allow to dry, and then I can glaze over that dried white paint, that textured white paint, with transparent oil colors. And here we can see that I'm glazing the oranges with the reddish orange over this textured white paint, and which is now dry. And then I can sort of wipe the texture, the surface of the paint to bring out the texture. Here, this is the blue water, and I've painted the water with a white paint, a pure white paint, using a very watery texture, and then glazing over it with a transparent blue, which I then wipe the top of the paint strokes to bring out the texture, to create even a more watery texture. So which of these two versions is the one that you like best? And so let's look at that water a little more closely. Which one do you like better? I can't decide myself. There's certain things that I like about the earlier version, and there are certain things that I like about the later version. So, an art quiz. Let's talk about our art quiz. Well, in the 20th century, a very famous artist, in 1921, working in a garage outside of Paris, painted this picture of the three masked musicians. It's a fairly large picture. It's about 6 by 6 feet. And this painting is in the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Well, in Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia Museum, we have another version by that artist, painted at the same time in the summer of 1921 in that same garage outside of Paris. Now, which of the two is the better painting? They have the same three figures, and it's an example of synthetic cubism. So it looks like almost like cut sheets of paper that have been collaged to create this image. Which one do we like better? Well, the one in the Philadelphia Museum seems more complex with its shapes, but the one over there on the left seems more dramatic, especially in its colors. So it's for us to look at each of those versions and decide which one we like best, because they were painted by the same artist at the same time in the same studio in 1921 outside of Paris. So the quiz question for this time is, who is that famous artist from the 20th century that painted these two paintings? And we have 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, pencils down. Well, the answer is Pablo Picasso, probably the most famous artist of the 20th century. And he painted both of these paintings that are about the same size in a garage outside of Paris in the summer of 1921. Well, thank you for watching this video. And if you like it, be sure to subscribe and like it and write a comment. I answer all the comments. But thank you for watching.
If you like this video, be sure to subscribe, like, and share.
And don't forget to ring the bell.